When we were tired, or his master's letter, to my little brother, who might end up taller than me someday. This happened in the days when we were tired. The land was tired, and the sky was tired, and the sun, and the rain, and the snow, and the people. There had been too much cannon thunder, and shaking, and gun rattle, and falling, and no sleep, and dust and ashes, and we were tired. There had been so much frost and fire and breaking that there seemed to be no more friends to be possibly left in the land that had not been burned apart by there being two sides or torn apart by the guns. Most all of the men and many of the women had left, so that you could say the village was empty, but there was not enough village left for being empty, because it was burned when the wave came over it, and it picked up the men and women who had no children, and they took anything they could kill with, and that they thought they would help them save themselves, and they left us. And the wave went over and left tired. Somewhere far the wave was still going over and picking up villages and faraway cities, but here it left only tired. I walked through the street one spring morning. It was unusually warm that day, and the unpaved streets were filled with the children who were left. They were playing with balls or ropes or anything else they found, running around and laughing, even though they were hungry. There could be more hunger in the cities, more than here. I was carrying a basket because I needed firewood. The electric wires had never been laid down in this small village that was now even smaller. The warm southern breeze picked up my faded skirt and carried it against my legs, and I put down the basket and removed my gray shawl. I let the wind caress me. Lyuba, hey Lyuba! I turned to look in the direction the voice came from. It was Baba Zoya, the old woman who lived in a half-burned house close to the street. Oj, ty prenace day. Vdanku, I thanked her for her compliment. Vitelsa, come vi. I returned the compliment and asked how she was. Je well, ma sina narit lettre. I felt a pang of jealousy. My own brother had not written me any letter, or at least not one that I knew of. When the revolution came here, there were two of us left. I would not allow him to leave. After all, he was only 14. But though he was 2 years my junior, he had never understood anyone's no but his own. And the people he wanted to go with wanted him to go, and they had guns and they were the revolution. And I could not stand against them, and he went, and I knew not where. "Te well," I answered. Baba Zoya looked at me sad, tired, but hopeful. "Sluchaj, ty have groni?" Well, yes, I had money. My house was tired and empty, but it stood still. It pained me with memories and gave me comfort, and it stood still. And I had money because no one else had money, and no one wanted money because there was not much use for it because you could not eat it. And so there was not much use to spend money because no one wanted it. I was surprised, but I had a bit of money. Tak, Baba Zoya. She answered that her son in his letter had asked for money and said he really needed it, and would I trade her the money for some pickles she had stored in her cellar. I looked at her face. I did not think her son in the army would need money. Why? How would it be of use to him? I began to doubt that the letter was even from her son, and it would be best for her if she just kept the pickles. But the sun was warm and her face looked less tired from thinking of helping her beloved child, and so I agreed and took the pickles and brought the money. And I went for firewood. I came back with a basket full of sticks I could find at the edge of the woods, and I saw an old man. He was old and bent and wore a faded cloak and stopped all people asking for help and saying he had no home and wanted to rest and eat. And the people said, like, "Sorry, old man, we would invite you, but there is no food for us, and I have a little sister, and my house is almost no better than the street because it is broken." Or, "Here is some raw wheat that I have, and there are good grass in the forest that we eat, and you can find it too, and I hope you will be warm tonight." I still had a house, and so I came to the man. "Well, Mornak." Good morning, I said. He looked in my face and said it back. I said to him, "I have a house that stands, and some nuts from the forest, and some wheat and pickles, and I can make a fire, and he can come with me." I did not know this man, but I was tired inside, and did not want to think more than I really had to. And he came with me, and I made tea from some bitter herbs I gathered that were good. He reached over the smooth wooden table and handed me an envelope. I looked at him with a question. and he spoke in New Nebskian, which is not a tongue spoken in very much provincial Lislavia too often, and which I could speak only brokenly. This letter I found on the earth, and my master said to pick it up and go to this village, and give it to the person who invites me to their home. Your master? I looked around. Where is he? Has he place to stay? The man chuckled. He does not live on the earth as we do, but he lives in us and speaks to us and saves us from evil. Well, how then he said to give this letter? How do you know it is to me? The man breathed in and then out slowly. I know because he said to me, and you can also speak to him. And how does he know? The man chuckled. He knows everything, and he hears everything, because he made everything. I opened the envelope. The letter was in my brother's writing. I looked up at the man. I believed what he said, because why would he need to lie? And I read the letter, and it said my brother had been afraid, but he learned to live there, and he loved me, and much missed me and wanted to see me, but only after victory came, and he was sure it would come, but I should be careful and take care of myself in the house. Vdanko, I whispered, through hot tears that choked me. Thank you. After all too many letters get lost when the wave has burned everything, and the land is so tired and there is no order, and so the letters get lost. That night I lied awake in my bed, and I thought that the house was not so empty anymore because the old man was there. And then I thought about his master. If he made everything, he could make my brother live to the end of the war. And so I spoke to him and asked him to make that happen because I knew he could. And I felt a little less tired inside. It was 1 year after the end of the war. I was nervous because I was in a very big city that had power and lights and vehicles that could float in the air, and so many people. And I was excited but nervous because I would meet my brother. I stopped a taxi, and the driver could have been surprised because of my provincial clothes, but said nothing. He probably saw stranger clothing in this very large city that was the most important in Nebsky. And so I got in and asked him to take me to the cafe, and he took me there and I gave him money. My hand was shaking and I didn't think it was real. I opened the glass door and a little bell rang and startled me, but I came in and looked around. Everything smelled sweet and like coffee and milk cream and other sweet things. There was a pretty woman at the register who smiled at me, and I smiled back and probably looked nervous. I raised my head and my heart jumped. Will I finally see him? What does he look like? But the cafe was empty except for me and the lady, and so I went and sat down in a red booth by the window, looking out into the street, and hoped that it was allowed here. But I was not reproached, and so I concluded it was. I looked down at my lap when I felt a shadow come over the table. I looked up and felt myself freeze in time and space. He looked me in the eyes, and I in his, and I felt a part of me come back from a very dark place. He was older, taller than me now, but still him. I lifted my hand and touched his face with my fingertips. Then I started sobbing and shaking, and he grabbed my hand, and I felt his tears in it, even though he was taller than me. He was still 2 years my junior. That year should not have been a tired time. It should have been an exhilarating last year of childhood for me, and his start of an adventurous fantasy. But what was it? What could I call that time when we were tired? After which I looked up, and my little brother was taller than me. But of the things that had made me less tired, the warm spring wind, the children playing, working on my neighbors' houses that could still be saved, and seeing how we could still live a life if we tried so hard, and the old man and his master, and the letter. The letter! I looked up at my brother. Remember that letter you sent me that day? I didn't wait for him to respond, and instead pulled out the creased envelope that I had carried with me for more than a year. I unfolded it once more and handed it to him. He took the letter out and with trembling hands read it. He gently set it down on the table and looked at me with a bewildered face. What's wrong? I asked, now worried. Why did seeing this letter make him so shocked? Did it bring back a memory he wanted to forget? He opened his mouth, closed it, cleared his throat, and finally spoke. When I wrote this letter, you see, it was when we were stationed in this village. I wrote it in an old wooden house and left it there. We were attacked, and the whole house burned down, and the letter too. And I never had any envelope to use. The letter was burned to ashes, but these are the very words I wrote in it. I know for sure. We looked at each other, the sun reflecting off of our faces, and sat there in silent awe.